Are you like us? Tired of all the politically correct horseshit on podcasts and in the media? Need a podcast that's funny, smart, and gassy? It's not politically correct. It's just correct. This is the Carolina Underground. Throw that middle finger in the air. Raise them up. Because it's time to get loud, proud, and in your face. Generation X. Generation X. The best generation of all time meets the grit of the South. It's about everything and nothing at all. From current events to woolly boogers to movies to politics. Loud, brash, funny, and never, and I do mean never, predictable. The Carolina Underground with Mark and Mike.
Yo, 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 yo! It's the Carolina Underground, and we're back again, coming to you live deep in the dark depths of the replica back cave. And I have with me, as always, my partner in high crimes and misdemeanors, somewhere deep in the dark depths of Sparkleberry, and tonight, ladies and gentlemen, he is naturally aspirated.
Well, I was. I think I'm doing better now. We'll see if I decide to cough up a lung here again in a minute. So how are you this evening, my friend?
Ooh, if anybody could do any better than me, I don't think they could stand me.
Well, there's a lot of room of things to unpack there.
Today is May the 4th. May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you, yes.
And, you know, this ain't just about Star Wars. This is really essentially Nerd Appreciation Day.
Well,
so go out, find a nerd in your life, and just give them a blowjob.
All right. That's a big ask, but all right.
It didn't work when I asked my wife this morning.
Well, so, I'm not shocked.
I hope you have better luck than I did.
Well, you know, I don't even know where to go from that. I really don't know how I do not have a transition for that. I'm completely at a loss for words.
It's going to be a good episode. We're going to piss somebody off.
Oh, well, I'm ready to piss somebody off right off the bat.
Uh-oh.
So, you have a Max subscription like I do, I think, right?
Max. Is that the HBO one?
Yeah, it used to be HBO.
Yeah, I do have a Max subscription.
So,
yes.
have they been shoving that movie 2073, recommending that left and right to you like they have to me?
No.
All right. Well,
But I can say that with a reason, because I haven't logged into Max in probably 3 months.
Well, you'll probably see it. And, you know, it's the story, it's post-apocalyptic, you know, where everything went wrong, and it's supposedly about this one singular female character. Well, so I was bored enough and I didn't have anything I wanted to watch, so I turned that thing on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there were about maybe 8 minutes of content before they proceeded to roll the clock back to tell you why everything went to hell. And it is all hardcore left wing, Orange Man bad, Nigel Farage bad propaganda. And then they go on for about 20 minutes.
And
now,
so
again,
they didn't learn their lesson with Snow White?
Apparently not. Then, again, they talk for about 20 minutes about all of the stuff that all of the conservatives are doing to destroy the world, and then go back to another 5 minutes of actual supposed content, and then they go on another tirade. And, now I watched it. I did watch it to the end, because after the first 5 or so minutes of listening to that diatribe, I said, well, here's an opportunity to see what they believe.
I'm going to make a guess. It's either that you took one for the team, or they had a hot chick that took her top off.
No hot chicks with tops off.
Damn.
It was the actress was that woman that played in The Walking Dead. She was the leader of the Whisperers in The Walking Dead, and she played in one of
I
the.
personally did not watch The Walking Dead after they killed that old man that drove the camper.
Oh, really, man? You quit Dale? You're talking about Dale? That was like the
Yeah,
second season that they
yeah.
killed Dale.
That's when it started sucking.
Yeah, it did. It went really dark for a while there. It really truly did. But yeah, the well, she was also in Fantastic Beasts. She was the one that was the leader of the people that were trying to kill all the witches in
Mm.
the Fantastic Beasts, if you follow it. But anyway, she is
I've watched
she's
a couple. Is that the one where this got like had Johnny Depp played the bad guy?
yes
It's in the
yes
Harry Potter world, but
yeah
it's not Harry Potter. It's Neil
yeah
Scamander or whatever his name is, or
yes
something like that.
something like that, Scamander, yeah. But yeah. But yeah, he's the guy that writes the books on all the magical creatures and how misunderstood they are. But yeah, so she ain't exactly what I would consider to be a hot woman, and I wouldn't necessarily want to see her take her top off personally.
No
But no,
shoes, no shirt. Show me them titties.
have you ever, what is it? Carrington is the name of the guy.
Carrington.
I think it's his name. He's the country and western comedy singer that sings "Show Them to Me." And
I
Lord
ain't heard
knows,
that.
oh no, yeah, and he always, lo and behold, no matter what, some woman will stand up and bare her boobs
Well, hey,
somewhere in
it's
the.
kind of like Mark Twain said about that dog on the train. If you go around, even though that dog has legs that looks like parentheses turned around backwards, and you show him to people and you don't charge no money, somebody will stop and look at him.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, somebody will stop and look at whatever you have to show. There's no doubt. They may not understand it.
There is a show on Max I watch, and I just got reminded of that. I don't necessarily log into Max itself. I use Apple TV, which I guess aggregates shows that I like
Right.
off all of them, so I don't really log into a particular one. But
Mhm.
I am really, this show or this podcast was started based on talking about paranormal stuff, and I like watching like that paranormal caught on tape and
Oh
stuff
yeah.
like that. And they did an episode, and it kind of struck home because they were talking about the story or the figure of Rawhead and Bloody Bones.
I'm not
And,
familiar. Rawhead and
okay,
Bloody Bones.
well, Rawhead and Bloody Bones is there's a couple different versions of the story, and it's the
Hmm.
closest thing that folklore in Appalachia comes to the vampiric character.
Hmm.
And most of the time when you think of vampires, you think of Dracula and Transylvania and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But the in the United States, I would say, particularly in the southern area, the
Hmm.
southern vampire, most people, because of Anne Rice and all of that, think of like New Orleans or something like that,
Uh-huh.
because of Interview with the Vampire, Queen of the Damned, and the entire like the Vampire Lestat,
Lestat,
and
yeah, all of that stuff.
and
Yep.
that that whole series is
Hmm.
shebang. And then of course then you had Stephanie Meyer's take on vampires, where they sparkle like diamonds in the sun, and that they doesn't really burn up. That's just what happens to them.
Hmm.
But it kind of they were talking about vampires in the American South.
Okay.
And the South is very rich with history and tragedy, and
Hmm.
while you know both of those are intertwined. And if you look at history and the intertwining of history and tragedy, that's also the character, what really foists the character of the vampire on you, right?
Hmm.
It's a historical figure. They're old and they are tragedy because they are stuck in perpetual eternity
Hmm.
looking for sustenance that they didn't obtain in life. So it was just kind of weird, but they were talking about that. And one of the old stories about Rawhead and Bloody Bones I remember hearing was about old lady Betty who lived up in the mountains somewhere, and she had an old razorback that she called Bloody Bones.
Okay.
And when you start reading this folklore story, it kind of makes me really take a minute to pause, and because we talk about Bigfoot and we talk about the Brown Mountain Lights and we've
Hmm.
talked about these other things, but some of these other more elusive characters, it kind of makes you wonder because I was rereading this old lady Betty story, right?
Hmm.
And it was talking about, I could definitely see the correlation between classic fairy tales in this story because, for example, you know, in the Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale,
Hmm.
when Little Red Riding Hood gets to Grandma's house, well, the wolf's already or killed the grandmother, right?
Yes.
And then Little Red Riding Hood says, "My, what big teeth you have! What big
Hmm.
claws you have!" Yada 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 yada. Well, in this story, that is actually part of it is when the hunter comes up against this ghost of Rawhead, which is essentially a skull with the flesh peeled back and bloody bones, which um, is essentially somebody that's been decapitated, and they go in conjunction, but they're actually separate. They say, "Oh my, what big teeth you have," and of course, Bloody Bone says, "All the better to eat you with." And you see the correlation between Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales and
Hmm.
then what is passing as folklore and cautionary tales in the American South. And it
Hmm.
kind of got me to thinking about exactly how much of this stuff do we frighten ourselves and delude ourselves into believing that we see,
Hmm.
and actually grasping onto it because it is passed down through cautionary tales. Like, for example, the urban legends, like the urban legends of you don't have sex in a car because you're going to hear the feet of your friend or something hanging from a rope on top of you. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
And that's cautionary tales for children. And I mean, and if you think about it, we are told all of this stuff from a very impressionable young age, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Now, when you and I were coming up,
Hmm.
the $6 Million Man was a big TV show with Lee Majors, right?
That is correct. Yes.
And you remember they had a Bigfoot character in the $6 Million Man,
Yes, they did.
and it was
Hmm.
played by Andre the Giant.
Hmm.
I don't think anybody else could have played the character other than
Probably
Andre
not.
the Giant.
Hmm.
But we see this stuff and it becomes ingrained in our day to day lives. And then the question is a lot of this quote unquote paranormal stuff, like creatures and stuff that we see, is it really because our mind is working super overtime to make sense of situations and places that we can't really process, and
Hmm.
so we think we see these so-called characters, or we think we hear them, or we think we are encountering something that is that far out there that there is absolutely no explanation for it.
Well, that's a lot. Now,
Well, I ain't
so,
done.
oh, you're not done. Well, do you
Well,
want me
no,
to
go
just
ahead. I
finish
mean,
and let you
I'm
go ahead?
no, go ahead. Well, I mean, what?
Well, the thing that fascinated me the first time that I visited my girlfriend's country in Costa Rica was the similarity of the fairy tales and folklore
Mm-hmm.
to the same stories that that we had in the South and in Europe and everywhere else around the world. I mean, the stories of
Mm-hmm.
the elves, the stories of the shape
The fairies.
changers or
Yep.
werewolves, the stories of, they have one of them that sticks in my mind is La Llorona, which is the woman that, she was having a child out of wedlock and she decided to drown the baby for one reason or another, and then after drowning the baby, you hear her going down the creek mourning and crying out for the baby that she lost. And,
Mm.
and that may be a bastardization of the story, but there's variations of those stories worldwide. I mean, werewolves, shapeshifters that turn into wolves, those stories are found all over the world, as I
Right.
understand it. And so you look at that, and again, it's like the stories of the flood, the great flood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got evidence that a great flood, a worldwide cataclysmic flood occurred at the end of the Younger Dryas. Okay, um, you know, and so you look at those, and again, as I understand it, the roots of the vampire legends were uh, partially, or at least heavily influenced by tuberculosis, the disease they called consumption
Mm-hmm.
uh, for a
Which
long
Doc
time.
Holliday died of, by the way.
Correct. Yeah, and
Behind
again,
you, Huckleberry.
yeah, but and I mean, it was the complete lack of understanding of bacteria and virology that that is part of what led to that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and again, the belief that came up, and I can't remember the name of the particular individual that I was that was at the root of it, but his family, they kept coming down with consumption and dying of consumption, and he was advised to exhume the bodies and then look at the heart, and if there was any blood left in the heart, that one was the vampire, and they had to cut
Mm-hmm.
the head off, and then I think it was the collarbones that they would cross into a
Across,
cross
yep.
over the and things of that nature. And of course, decomposition, um, it varies. The speed of decomposition varies based on the environment that you're in. If
Correct.
depending on what type of environment it is, your body may not decompose as rapidly
Well,
as
and it's like,
yeah.
and because they found baby mammoths that still have blood in their veins and brain
Right,
tissue.
exactly. So again, and again, we've talked about this many times before, and I'll say it again. We 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 think we know so much, but the amount of stuff that we don't know is so much greater than what we actually know. I mean,
Right.
we tend to be very prideful in believing that we know things.
Right.
Okay. And I mean, there are some things that, again, everything that we believe is a theory. Okay. Because a theory cannot be proven. It can only be disproven. All right. Now, so again, there are a lot of things, gravity, for example, nobody has successfully disproven gravity yet. Okay. We don't know what
Now,
it
wait a minute.
is.
My wife says it don't exist.
We don't know what it is precisely, but we know that it will make you fall down and bump your butt if you're not careful. So,
True.
you know, I'm not sure where I'm transitioning to with this, but
I
again,
don't
the commonality of the tales that we tell that we use
either.
to frighten one another. Now, some of the cautionary tales, like getting hot and heavy in the back of the car, and that was the guy with the hook that
Oh
was
yeah.
the way I always remember hearing it be told.
Hmm.
Now, I mean, again, that's something that
And
you.
the interesting part is it never failed when you got told these stories, and even if you get told the stories today,
Mhm.
the person telling the story knows somebody that it really happened
Oh
to.
yeah, and it actually happened to a friend of a friend of a friend of mine. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, but again, if you, I raised two daughters, and so I definitely wanted young boys to be scared of attempting to take advantage of my daughters, and so that's a good cautionary tale for them to hear because I very
Yeah.
well might
The
be the
other
guy
one is
out
just
there
when they come to the door, pull them aside and say, "Look, I got a Smith and Wesson and a Glock.
and a
You jack
shovel.
around with my daughter, you're gonna meet one of them."
Yep, and a
But
shovel
in this,
and.
and it all goes like with Bigfoot, and it's like
Mhm,
with the raw head and bloody bones.
mhm.
I got to thinking about, well, is it really? tied to stories that were told as children, and that we are perceiving, our mind is just filling in gaps with bits and pieces of information that it has picked up over our existence and experiences. And I think to a certain extent, I'm not discounting that there are not unexplained things out there. I'm not doing that by no means,
Mm-hmm.
because I do firmly believe there are things out there that we do not know what they are.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
in this instance, there is a nursery rhyme from that. It comes from around Yorkshire, England, in like the middle late at about the time the English were immigrating to the colonies in the United States. And
Mm-hmm.
the Appalachian area in North Carolina were made up of a lot of European immigrants. So you had
Sure.
the Vlad the Impaler tales,
Mm-hmm.
Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
You had the werewolves through Bavaria, which is the area that it actually started in,
Mm-hmm.
was Bavaria.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but there was also, and you also, and that's also where you also get the stories of the wild hairy man, which precursed the sightings and the things of Bigfoot,
Right.
because you had all that. But there was a nursery rhyme, and I'm not sure the date, but it was circa 1700s,
Mm-hmm.
where it says, raw head and bloody bones, steals naughty children from their homes,
Mm-hmm.
takes them to his dirty den, and they are never seen again.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, all right. So Krampus, which
Krampus, yeah.
is Norwegian, okay,
Yeah.
and would come, and if I remember it correctly, you had to get socks for Christmas. If you didn't get socks for Christmas, Krampus was going to come get you in the middle of the night, and off you go. And that was what happened if you were a bad person, if you were a bad boy or
Right.
a bad girl. Now, but again, the Sasquatch, again, you've got the big hairy man legends, and
Hmm.
what I'm referencing right now is your discussion of the European immigrants bringing all of these stories.
Right.
Granted, I know that they did bring variations of them, and I'm sure of that. But again, the Inuit people up in Alaska, who were very, very decidedly not European, have
Hmm.
been carving totems of Sasquatch since long before there were European settlers.
Oh, well,
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But
So,
and it's kind of like how you see the bird, half human people in Egypt
right.
and in the Incan Empire,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's the correlation of what where is the link that we're missing that ties all this stuff together, because there has to be something that
Well,
was shared, a shared commonality, because
right.
people just don't wake up one day and say, in Egypt and in the Yucatan Peninsula, and say, oh, we're going to make a pyramid.
Right. And again, the like the Tuatha De Danann, the in out of Ireland, and then there are the Tiki in the Polynesian islands,
Hmm.
and they all, again, all there's commonalities. That's the whole thing. The Incans, the Peru, the Mayans, the
Hmm.
Aztec, all of these guys. I mean, again, there are significant commonalities amongst the stories and tales that they tell, and that is fascinating because you're right. There has to be, well, okay, let's talk about another common shared storytelling of the Tower of Babel. Okay,
Okay.
so according to the good book, we all used to speak the same language and essentially be the same culture. And then we got all uppity and decided to build a tower big enough to reach to heaven. And we were scattered to the, four corners of the earth, and our language was changed because we were uppity. So now again, and if you, all of this is conjecture, bottom line is if you sit around and think about what 10,000 years from now, if all of our record keeping is completely wiped out, lost, or, again, how many people do you know that still have a functional VCR and, God forbid, a functional
I'm raising,
Betamax?
I'm raising my hand.
Yeah, I do. But again, we've gotten to a point where most folks don't even have a DVD player anymore.
I
you
don't
know?
have a DVD player, but I will say, my
Hmm.
part, you and I talk about this offline frequently,
Hmm. Hmm.
and particularly when it comes to books and stuff
Right.
like that,
Hmm.
is there are just so, because books used to be, and I guess it's kind of are still my thing.
Oh yeah.
I love books, and
Hmm.
I used to love going to Barnes and Noble and Books a Million and Borders and all of that. And I mean, I would spend hours
Hmm.
going through the bookstores. And I mean, I would spend hundreds of dollars every visit to a bookstore.
Hmm. Hmm.
However, when you buy books like that, that means you have to find a place to put them.
Yes.
And I no longer have places to put them. I have one room upstairs in my house
Hmm.
that is full of nothing from floor to about waist high. The whole floor is full of nothing but box books.
Hmm. Hmm.
I just don't have anywhere to put them. So I have turned to digital.
Hmm.
And the bad part about it is I'm one of those people that like to write notes on the pages. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Hmm.
And so digital reading is not ideal for me, and I love the smell of a book. There's nothing
Oh
like
yeah.
the smell of a book, but I just don't have room for them. And it's kind of like the same thing with media. I don't
Hmm.
have anywhere to put any more DVDs. I don't have
Hmm.
anywhere to put anything else. And it's just we live in this world where we're taught that consumption is how you live the American dream.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Hmm.
And part of the fallacy of that is the consumption drives you to work harder to make more to consume more,
Right.
but it doesn't make you happy.
Yeah, but yeah, because that's how you're measured. You're measured based on what you consume and the rate at which you consume, as opposed to, things like what kind of a good person you are. Do you have a good heart?
Right.
Are you kind? Are you polite? Are you considerate? Which, again, and I was having that conversation just this afternoon, as a matter of fact. The the whole relationships between men and women, and the good book saying that the woman is, that the man is supposed to be the Godhead and supposed to devote his life to God, and the woman is supposed to be submissive to the husband, et cetera, et cetera. Well, uh that's not a real popular viewpoint amongst the young people of today. And and
Well, it
there's.
also rises to where you make the argument, because I've had this discussion as well with a lot of people,
Mhm.
particularly my wife,
Hmm.
jokingly telling her that she's supposed to submit.
Right.
But obviously, I think the context of the scriptures themselves has to be evaluated. However,
Hmm.
if you are not willing and you consider yourself a Christian to not willing to accept the validity of those verses,
Right.
but the validity of some other ones, then you're kind of getting into an area to where you're picking and choosing like a
Hmm.
cafeteria. And the
Right.
Bible is not a cafeteria where you can like the red jello but don't like the green. You kind of have to take all of it.
Well, and that's the thing. I've had that discussion before as well. There are things in the Bible that I listen to and I'm like, well, either I don't understand that or I don't agree with it, but it ain't my place. That's
Right.
what the book
And a
says.
lot of it
Yeah.
though is context,
Yeah.
because a lot of people will read something, and I bet you the percentage of people that have actually read the Bible,
Very small.
I bet, is book cover to cover,
Hmm.
or even just the New Testament cover
Hmm.
to cover.
Yeah.
Because theoretically, the law belongs to the Jews. We're under a new covenant with
Right.
under the New Testament with Jesus.
Hmm. Yep.
So, but I will bet you it's less than 10%
Oh, I would be
of
surprised. Wouldn't
the
be
adult
surprised at all.
population.
No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Yeah, but yeah, my brain is splintering in about 18 different directions right now, and I can't think of what I want to say. So I'm just
Well,
gonna.
and well, we can. I actually found a copy of the Bible that I have, for some reason, The Bible is the only book that I process better when I have somebody else reading it.
Hmm.
Now,
Okay.
when I listen to Audible, I like it. I love Audible. Several bunch of books in Audible, and usually when I buy a Kindle book, if an Audible book is available, I buy them together
Sure.
because I like the fact that I can actually see it printed and then
Hmm.
I can listen to somebody else get it because you pick up a lot of cues. And I like it a lot better when the author reads its own book because you understand and you can get the nuances of their language of how they read it
Sure.
to grasp what their meaning of what
They
they wrote.
Right, and that's an excellent point because so much of the world that we interact with is based on nuances that you can't get without actual interaction. And again, you think
Right.
about animals, okay? I mean, your puppy dog cannot speak English, okay? They can't they can't speak English, they can't speak Spanish, all they speak is dog. But you know what she wants most of the time?
Well, of course I do because she's a
Yeah.
Princess American.
Well, but you know what I mean? It's like the animal kingdom, you know good
But
and
see, here's the
well.
difference though, is
Mhm.
dogs do speak.
Oh yeah, they do.
The problem with it is most people's heart are not in the right place to understand what they're saying.
And there's truth to that with humanity too. I mean, again,
Oh
you've
yeah.
got to, what was it? How's the phrase go? I am only responsible for what I say. I have no responsibility for what someone else hears based on what I've said. And I've run into that many, many, many times where I've had
Well,
people tell me, oh, well, you said this. No, that is not what
right.
I said at all. This
Well,
is
and I
what I
mean, and
said,
that's part of the problem that we get in society today because people hear what the version of what you say or
Hmm.
write or do what that they want to and don't understand exactly what you're saying
Oh, yeah.
because that's what causes a lot of the chasm
Hmm.
of what happens in the divide of socioeconomic classes, in
Hmm.
the divide of political classes, in the divide of racial classes.
Hmm.
And it's just you don't listen to what everybody else is saying. And we're all guilty of that
Right.
because we've already started processing what they're saying and think we understand what they're saying and have their meaning down before they ever get done getting the thought out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, it's one of the things I learned a long time ago. If, especially with folks that like to interrupt, okay, they've listened to a portion and they've already determined what it is that you're going to say based on a few words or however long they listened, and
Hmm.
already formulated their response, be it agreement or argument towards what they believe you are saying. So they haven't listened to what you're saying because they have already determined what their response is before you finished speaking.
Right,
And so
right.
therefore they interrupt you. So when people are interrupting me, I usually stop the conversation because they're not listening anyway.
Well,
So
you
what
know
I
what I
say doesn't
usually
matter.
tell them?
What's that?
I break out the Churchill line.
What's that?
Will you stop interrupting me while I'm trying to interrupt you?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, I mean, again, it usually depends again on the context of the conversation. If it's important, which most of the things that we converse about really aren't all that important. I
Well,
mean, again,
and part of the thing is too, you also have to take into consideration. I'm going to lift this up for your dissection and consideration. Okay.
okay,
We ain't as young as we used to be, right?
God no.
And a lot of times when you're saying something or I'm saying something, we think of something to say and we got to say it because if we wait till the other one of us shuts up, we ain't going to remember what we wanted to say.
Well, there's a point there. Yeah, and and again, it's one of those things where, if I was as intelligent and knew as much as I thought I knew when I was younger,
Well, there's truth in that because,
yep.
I was just sitting here thinking, well, not today. This was a while ago. We've had some recent health scares with my parents and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So,
Hmm.
it gets you to contemplating really what's important.
Sure.
And so we were sitting here thinking, and I was like, when I was in school, like high school and college, my dad was the dumbest human I have ever met in my life.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Just absolutely. I don't know how he survived.
Right. Hmm.
And then as soon as I got out of college and got in the real world,
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm like, wow, it's amazing how much my dad learned in like
Oh yeah.
4 years.
Yeah. I've gone through that 3 times with my 3 children. Yep. As they got old enough, I
Hmm.
went from just the smartest man in the world to a complete blithering idiot that's not smart enough to tie my own shoes to,
Well, that's why they made slip-ons.
yep, exactly. But I was in sitting there and thinking about, the whole, back to the review that I gave of the movie
Hmm.
2073. One of the things that I found fascinating is, of course, they went through all of their diatribe, but there were some elements of the truth and things that are actually happening that were woven into that tapestry of what they
Hmm.
believe, and so there are certain points of commonality even between the right wing and left wing
Hmm.
people. But the thing is, they the powers in control do not want that commonality to be recognized,
Right.
because it's the whole divide and conquer method. You know,
Well,
if we,
I think about it. It's kind of like Star Wars.
yeah.
This being May the 4th,
Hmm.
you had Palpatine, who was the Supreme Chancellor,
Right.
but also the Sith Darth Sidious.
Hmm. Hmm.
He was playing the trade federations and stuff against the Republic.
Right. Hmm.
So the Republic and the trade federations were fighting this whole long war,
Hmm.
thinking the other one was bad, but they were both being played so
Hmm.
Sidious could do what he wanted to do. And that's
Right.
exactly what's happening now. We are being castigated
Hmm.
and segregated
Hmm.
because of beliefs or ideas by people who are essentially scared. I mean,
Hmm.
you have all these people who their livelihoods, and I mean, we're talking the circuitorial migration of millions of dollars that Doge has found and all that,
Hmm. Hmm.
that's not ending up where it used to. I mean, I don't the significance of that, gets kind of off in the weeds when and I grant no, we don't talk a lot of politics, but anymore. But this
Hmm.
gets, I have a feeling that this is going to be a lot more monumentous judged in a historical perspective than it is in the current events of the day.
Yeah, I mean, again, because in the current events of the day, they're still attempting to misdirect and misguide
Right.
and misinform so that they maintain the narrative that they've been foisting down
Hmm.
everybody's throats for decades, you
Now
know.
I got something I'm going to run up the flagpole,
All
and
right.
we're not really going to discuss it. This is something I have read
Okay.
and that I am researching for a future episode.
Hmm.
Okay. The Alaskan Purchase was purchased for $7 million.
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
What, 2 cents an acre? Is that right?
Yep.
Something
Something
like
like
that.
that. Hmm.
Do you know why we purchased Alaska?
I am Well, actually, right now I'm confusing it, I think, with the Louisiana purchase. I'd have to look back at that. But
Okay.
for some reason, I recall there being there was a debt owed,
There was
and for the blockade, I want to say the
during the
blockade
Civil War of
during the Civil
Charleston.
War in Charleston. Yeah. Okay.
And
So,
so we bought Alaska
hmm.
so the North could pay off a war debt
Hmm. Hmm.
because the North knew that the American people would not stand for them just forking over money to the Russians.
Right.
So they said we had to get something for it.
Hmm.
And Alaska was about as dead as it could be with nothing going on, or so they thought. So
Yeah,
they
they
said,
had.
well, you pay us the $7 million you owe us, and we'll give you this hunk of desolate land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Now, that
think
is the rumor and the theory that I've heard. I'm not 100% sure of the validity or the truth yet. I'm still in the process of researching.
my understanding about the whole Alaska thing was that was where they went to ply the seal trade, and they had decimated all of the seals that were indigenous to the area, so there was nothing left for them to hunt up there anyway. And so, yeah,
Hmm.
you can have it. It's cold. It's got grizzly bears. You know, it's an Inuit.
All
We we don't
right,
want them.
we're
Yeah.
running out of time.
Yep.
I'm going to leave you with a factoid
All
before we
right.
shut things down.
Hit me.
Global warming, true or not true?
Completely false. But go ahead.
Exactly. Well, I was just saying, I read an article today that Antarctica actually added to the ice sheet
Mm-hmm.
this year or last year and didn't
Yep.
lose.
Well, again, back in if you look up the series Leonard Nimoy narrated In Search Of, they had an entire
That was a
episode.
good show. I remember that.
Yeah, they had an entire episode where the climate change issue was going to be the next ice age, and we were going to have glaciers extending down into Kansas and stuff like that, and somehow the sea levels were still going to manage to rise, and Florida was going to become flooded based on
Why
the
come
ice
this
age.
shit don't never happen to California? Why can't it get something?
I
I mean, damn.
understand, my friend.
Well, with that, that's it. That's the snout to the curly tail and everything in between. And if you know a nerd, if you ain't going to give them a blowy, give them a hand job. And we gone.
Have a good evening.
All right, you crazy bunch of motherfuck. Wait, can we say mother? Anyway, you've been listening to the Carolina Underground. It isn't politically correct, it's just correct. Our motto is, if you can't go balls deep, don't go at all. Actually, that's not our motto, and I'm sorry, I don't even know what that meant. All right, we gotta go. We hope you enjoyed the show. And if you didn't, we hope it really pissed you off. Follow us on Twitter at Carolina UNDGRND Underground, get it? Or drop us an email at Carolina UNDGRND, get it? At northstate.net. We want to hear from you. Y'all be cool. See you next time on Carolina Underground.